Yeah, so another aspect of the law is that there's an ordinance within the community commissions for public safety and accountability. When they negotiated with Chicago Police Department, they negotiated that if community members come together and there are 2,000 petition signatures for any one topic or subject that they want to see enacted or changed, the city commission has to have a special meeting where they will listen to the community members and they will, as Sam mentioned, can have direct influence on policy changes, right? So let's take, for instance,
2,000 signatures citywide.
That's a very low bar.
That's very low. We got way more than that to get on.
Yeah.
We did.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you are having trouble dealing with police on a certain issue, you can go out and find a bunch of people who want to sign a petition.
Yep.
yeah,
And
that's
you
why
already have a proven track record of being able to do that.
We
Right.
did get 3,500 petition signatures collectively.
sure.
You know, you got to prioritize.
I mean, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm really excited about
Well, your
this
marketing.
online survey system.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's what's quicker and easier than filling out a survey about something that you feel really strongly about. A really good example of this is we talked about police officers working too many days in a row, right? We could push the city commission to say, let's enact a policy where the police no one police officer can work them more than 7 days in a row, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to work 7 days now?
Exactly. So, we could take that and pull the survey, we can survey our community and say, hey, we want to enact a new policy that says no police officers should work more than 7 days in a row because we do not want anybody that's sleep deprived or, under, really extreme circumstances, being put into really extreme circumstances.
Do something for them first.
And then so we can poll our community, and if we get 2,000 people to say yes, and get petition signatures, then the city commission will then have to have a special meeting and then listen to us in terms of, okay, we want to pass this new policy that is, that's not going to allow any one police officer to work more than 7 days in a row, and then they can work with city officials, police leaders to enact that change.
Unless it's a fire drill, and then there's exceptions. They have to work.
A lot of this is going to take back and forth to work out in practice.
Yeah.
And I
It's a
think
brand new
another-
institution.
That's my point.
I think another-
by
Sorry, Jenny?
doing some things early on to demonstrate to the police that there are things you can do for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it easier for you then to go later and say, there are things we want you to do differently.
And I think what we are suggesting is like our main ideas for what creates public safety is really for them also. One of the big things that we talk about is making sure we have mental health care workers who are able to respond to mental health care calls and kind of taking some things off their plate that they just aren't trained in doing. And I have heard from officers that they don't want to be they agree that they don't have these skills. They agree that this is not their skill set and where they want to be spending their time and their energy. So saying that this is something we want to do, I think a lot of officers will be behind us and will want
giving them training. In some areas, it's giving them training. In some areas,
exactly. Yeah. So I think that we can build a lot of trust in that way by saying we are in I really believe that good public safety works for everybody. Not it's not saying the police are bad. It's not saying the community's bad. I think it needs to work together. And I think that one of the other things that we know is that establishing trust within the community is a really important aspect of public safety, and I think that that's something that we can also help to do through this position, and by showing I think by working with the officers, I think it's in their incentive to build trust within the community because they will be more successful at their jobs, and be able to having that relationship is essential for doing a good job.
It seems like this role is going to be extra helpful on the south and west sides where there is less trust for police.
Yeah.
In our neighborhood,
That's the
I'd
goal.
say overall people feel relatively comfortable calling the police, and that's obviously not true across the city.
Right.
So it seems like this could be a very, very small piece of bridging that.
That said, though, I did walk out of a Walgreens. I saw some dude running there and take 10 bottles of alcohol and then walk out, and I want to report an incident. I can't get somebody on the phone.
Yeah.
I've heard
there's that
that
shit
a lot, yeah.
too. Minor issues, but important too.
Yeah, or like when we walk out, we see a policeman on the corner it makes you feel safer, you say hi, you know there's someone you can talk to. Other areas that you're talking about, they see a policeman on the corner, they go the other way.
Right. And I think that's an important part of
that's-
having different councils for different
And I
areas.
mean, that's why crimes aren't getting solved, because there are people that don't feel safe talking to the police officers, and we could reduce our crime rate, we could close cases if people felt like they could trust so I mean, it seems like your job is a lot easier than it will be in other parts of the city if you get elected. Like,
There's no-
we're demanding though, you should know that like the 43rd ward, like when Michelle was our alderman, she got more calls than any other ward in the entire city.
And we did caps walks.
We did, yeah.
What is
we did
your
the caps walk.
experience with CAPS? Of CAPS? What do you think of it?
Very little. They came and talked to us once, but I didn't get much out of it.
That's a pretty common sentiment. I mean, this position comes on the backdrop of CAPS having been in place for almost 30 years. And it's funny, the acronym for it is Chicago Alternative Policing Strategies. But I don't know what the alternative is there. It's really, I don't know if any of y'all been to CAPS meetings before. They're bi-monthly meetings, by beat. And there are some really dedicated and very kind officers who run this program out of the 19th Police District. But the meetings themselves are essentially top-down listings of crime statistics in your area over the last couple of months. You can say a particular issue and they're not usually going to have a specific answer for you because the police officers who are working your beat aren't attending these meetings. And most of the advice is just call 911, that way we can advocate for more resources. And I understand that from their perspective, but it's not a two-way street when it comes to communication. I think the district council position, is designed to be much more two-way and community-led. It's actually in the law that you can't be a member of the police department to run for one of these positions. So it puts the community first in that conversation. And I also think it's important to elect people who are really proactive at reaching out to get people involved in those conversations. And not just the folks who would, of their own volition, show up at one of those meetings, but people who might not feel as comfortable talking to a police officer, or might have had a bad experience with a public safety issue, or with the police, or with being a victim of a crime in the past, and not really know where to turn. A lot of what I've enjoyed about this campaign aspect is having to go out and talk to people. And I haven't given my spiel about myself, but I started in advocacy.
Why don't you? Because the other two.
I can go at this.
We should have.
Look at that segue. So I, again, am named Sam Schoenburg, and I grew up in Springfield, Illinois, and got my start in advocacy when Barack Obama announced his presidential campaign in Springfield when I was a senior in high school. And I volunteered that day. I spent much of the next 2 years between going to college and also taking a semester off of college to organize on that 2008 campaign, which was just a deeply formative experience for me. The idea of just bringing a bunch of community members together who want to do something larger than themselves, make their community better, join together for some of these ideals was a really formative time for me, and obviously it was successful. He won, and I was in Virginia and went for a Democrat for the first time in 46 years, so that was cool. And then I graduated college and I continued organizing in a couple of nonprofit organizations for a few years. One focused on reducing the influence of corporate money in politics, which we're still working on, and one that focused on getting people to sign up for health insurance under the Affordable Care Act when it was first rolling out, which was more successful. And then I started law school and I went to NYU Law. Started the same month in August of 2014, that Michael Brown was killed by an officer in Ferguson, Missouri. It was a huge part of the national conversation that we really need to re-examine what policing and public safety look like in our communities. Spent a lot of my time in law school both trying to do as much work as I could, including clinical work for voting rights and working with low-income transgender clients who were looking for name changes or other kinds of services, working with asylum seekers, but also studying the criminal legal system. I had one particular professor who started a policing project at NYU that actually now does work in Chicago on this very issue.
NYU is in
New York University. Yeah, and his big message for me that I really took away was policing, really anywhere you look, has very few public inputs. There's not many ways for the democratic process to say what policing should look like, for the community to say what policing and public safety should look like. fast forward, I moved to Chicago, where I always wanted to live because my dad raised me a Cubs fan and he lived in Evanston. Moved here and found this community that Jenny was talking about of people in Springfield.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Who were working to create this new institution. So I sort of enthusiastically joined up when this coalition came together and just went door to door as a volunteer to get this law passed. But you know, like Jenny said, passing the law was one big hurdle, but actually having people run for it and bring life to these new positions was something I really want to make sure we do right. So I was interested in potentially running for this and met Jenny through that process and brought Murillo in too. And you know, I really am excited with the ideas that we've been able to develop for what this position can be.